This week, you're going to be working on the executive summary for your EPI report. You'll be working with your groups, and so in this video, I just want to talk a little bit about the requirements for the executive summary and some things to look out for. So to start with, you're going to make any recommended changes from the previous drafts, and I would go ahead and do that before you start on the executive summary, because for the executive summary, you're going to be going through some of those previous tables and plots that you would have made and picking out some of the ones that you think are the most impactful. So after that, you're going to include some of the inferential methods into the body of the report. And so if you remember, the body of the report is what you previously worked on in draft 2. So in the body of the report, you looked at the demographic variables univariately or by themselves. You then looked at the topic variables, and then you looked at the comparison between the two. And so you're going to add in some of those inferential methods to the univariate analysis of the topic variable and in the comparison of the topic to the demographic variables. So to start out with, you're going to add in 2 confidence intervals. So in the body of the report, you looked at each of the topic variables by themselves. And so on each of those pages in the body of the report, you're going to want to include some information about the confidence intervals for compliance of the topic variable. And so this work would have already been done in previous worksheets, and so now your group is just going to be incorporating that work into the body of the report. So as your group, when you're looking at your confidence intervals, if you found that your group members found different values for the confidence intervals, make sure that you didn't subset your data differently. And then if you can't figure out why you're seeing different values, if you are, then just send me an email and I'm more than happy to look at that and try to figure out why you're seeing different values there. So you're going to include that information. So that'll be 2 confidence intervals, one for each of your topic variables. Also for each of your topic variables, you're going to also include information about the hypothesis test, and this will be the hypothesis test where you compared it to some national percentage. And so again, you've already done all of the work for this in the previous worksheets. We're just incorporating it into the draft. And for both of these, I'm going to correct this percentage here. I see that typo now. But for both of these, I have examples of what this would look like for pneumonia vaccine. And again, I need to change the language here, so see the one that's on Canvas, not the one that's here in the video. But we already did both of these in the videos for Module 11 and for Module 12. And so for those, this is what the results would look like for the Kentucky data set. And so you can model the language off of each of these as you include that. You also performed chi-square test for association. And again, we saw how to do that in the videos. And so you'll want to include these now for each of those comparisons that you have in your report. And I have an example of what that would look like for the Kentucky data set. So again, you'll be able to take the language directly from here, but change it for your state and your particular variables, and then of course your values. And so again, you'll include this language for each of the comparisons. So after you add in this information to the body, you'll want to start working on the executive summary. And so the executive summary will be 1 to 2 pages long, and this is really meant to be a summary of the most major findings in your report. And these are usually occur in the report right after the introduction. And so the idea is if we think about how someone reads a report, they would read the introduction, then they would read the executive summary, and then if they want to dig deeper into the information, they want to see more of the analyses, then they would go on to read the body of the report. So the executive summary will be broken into 3 sections. There will be the major findings section, there will be the limitations, and then as well as the conclusion. And so in the major findings, this is where you're going to include some of the information that you thought was the most stand out from what you found. So from here, this is where you'll want to look through your body of the report, and you'll want to pick out some of the things you thought were the most interesting that you saw, whether it be from the univariate analyses or for those comparisons. And one thing to keep in mind, especially with the comparisons, often what these comparisons do for us is, let's say, for example, we wanted to have a campaign to encourage people to get the pneumonia vaccine. Well, often what we want to do is we want to target that to the groups that we see are not getting the vaccine compared to other groups, or not getting it at as high of a rate. So those comparisons can help us figure out, are there certain groups that we need to target? And so really focus on those comparative pieces, that third-party learning, to see, were there really some standout groups that you saw, these are maybe groups that we would want to target, again, if we were trying to promote these different preventative measures. The next section will be the limitation. Anytime that you do data analysis, there's always going to be limitations. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just something that we want to be really transparent about, that there's always going to be limitations whenever we analyze data. Specifically for your report, you're using unweighted data, which is a limitation. So here you'll want to talk about the use of unweighted data and why that's going to be a limitation. And one thing that you'll want to include in here is, previously in the course we looked at that comparison of demographic variables for your state using census data versus what you saw in the sample. And most likely what you saw was, in the sample, we tend to oversample those that are over the age of 65. And this is just something that happens with surveys. It tends to be that older people are more likely to answer them, so we end up oversampling them. So you get a higher percentage of people over the age of 65 than what's actually in the population. And so when we use unweighted data, this becomes an issue and can introduce bias in your report. And so again, that's the kind of thing that you'll want to talk about here in your limitations. And then finally, in the conclusion, you'll want to talk about how a public health official could use this report. And so how could somebody use your data analysis to maybe target people better if they're trying to promote these different preventative measures? How could this actually be placed into action and be used in the field to, again, help promote these different preventative measures? And so that will be all that you're doing for this report here. So again, you're making some of those changes to the body where you're including some of those inferential methods, and then you're also writing your executive summary. And again, I still have a couple changes I need to make to this draft. So the version that you see on Canvas may be slightly different than the one you're seeing here in the video. So as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can.